for Tuesday, March 16th, 2021. It is 6:16 p.m. Let's call roll, please.
Murray.
We might be missing Craig.
Oh, we are missing Craig. Oops. He was in the last meeting. Carrie, oh, thank you.
We could move forward. If you started to call the roll, I don't know.
Sure, that sounds good.
Okay. Isabel.
Here.
Box.
Here.
Dyke.
Here.
Kaylin.
Here.
Donna OJ. Marilee.
Here. And Carrie, are we getting close to Councilor Murray's arrival? Okay.
Do you want me to start with the city manager report?
Yeah.
Or wait.
Sure. Yeah, that sounds good.
Before we do that, sorry, Christopher. We do have a pastor online for invocation. If we wanted to do that first.
Well, then let's wait. I guess let's wait for Councilor Murray.
Okay.
If it's okay with the mayor, I don't know. We're just right. This is kind of a. We're running.
This is my evening. So yeah, this is. I can wait. You need an orchestra or something. Oh, hey, Craig. You're muted, Counselor.
Am I not showing up on video? I'm not muted.
Okay.
Craig.
Technology. Sorry.
It's all right. You're doing great. All right. And so Brandon's called. The rest of us have said here. Brandon, do you want to call Councilor Murray's name again?
Councilor Murray.
Here.
All right. So we've got invocation tonight. Excuse me. We've got Pastor Brandon Trentham of FBC Jenks. Welcome. Thanks for being here tonight.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. I just wanted to, I'm thankful for the opportunity. I'm the new student pastor at First Baptist Jenks, so I get to hang out with a lot of our city's kids and the surrounding kids. And, I just
city counselors.
Well, some of them. I don't know if I trust y'all after my time with Craig, but no, I'm just kidding. It's truly a blessing to get to serve our city and our folks alongside you guys. We think about you often, and I wanted to go ahead and open this up in prayer, if that's all right. And then I know that y'all have a lot of work to do, so we'll get it kicked off if that sounds great. So let's go ahead and pray. God, we love you so much, and I'm thankful for each one of these men and women and the way that they serve, the way that they take care of us and our community. God, I pray that you would guide them, guide their discussion, give them discernment on the decisions that need to be made, Lord, and ultimately bless each one of them because of the service that they do for us and the folks of Jenks. God, I'm so thankful for their hearts, so thankful for the way that they love us and love this city, and I can't wait to see all that you're going to do in the future. God, we trust you. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
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 Thank you so
Thank
much
you,
for the
Pastor.
opportunity.
Thanks, Brandon.
We'll see you guys.
All right. Have a good one.
Thank you.
And Councilor Box, would you mind leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance? And I'm going to mute myself for this just so we don't have some of the delay there, but I am proudly pledging, even though I'm muted.
Very well. I pledge allegiance to the flag of
Aye.
the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor. So let's move on to citizens' comments. Do we have any comments on any item that's not on our agenda tonight?
Mayor, we do have one. I'll just read it real quick. It's very short. This is from Mark Long at 11237 South Juniper Street. I live at previous state address. This is south of 111th on Juniper Street. The reconstruction of the intersection of 111th Street and Elwood has diverted tremendous amounts of traffic onto our streets for several months. The speed bumps are no longer functional and the road itself is in very poor condition. What is the plan to address this issue after the intersection of 111th and Elwood is open? Thank you.
Okay, it's a good question. And can someone on staff get back to this individual?
I will forward this to Chris Cloyd and they will get back to him.
Yes,
Okay, thank
please
you.
forward that to me and I'll talk with them and meet them on site if necessary to take a look at what their concerns are.
I
Great,
did
thank
fill out
you.
one of the forms on the potholes as well, because they'd recently filled in a pothole at 115th and Juniper. And after this last ice and snow, it's totally destroyed and there's large chunks of asphalt and everything. So I filled that out through the city form to see how productive that was. So that's in there.
Very good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mayor, Mr. Cloyd, this is Corey Box. If when you have any interaction with Mr. Long, if you could copy me on it. He's speaking from, well, I'm one of those people that have driven Juniper probably 100 times, I guess, since the construction started. It's kind of the only way I have access out to Glenpool. So I've been driving up and down that road, and I've witnessed firsthand that there's speed bumps, which may have been put in by the HOA. I'm not really sure. They're an interesting kind of speed bump. They're kind of tacked down. They're not a cementous product, but a few of them have just literally disappeared. And perhaps we can evaluate that particular stretch of road and kind of work it into the matrix with the current priorities. And Mr. Long was the HOA president in Eddington Place prior to moving over here, and he's one of my old neighbors. So he's pretty on top of these things. But you can copy me on any communication with him, and I'd be happy to meet you out there if I'm available.
Thank you, Councilor Box. I will do that.
All right, very good. And now we will get on to Mr. Shrout's report. What do you have for us?
Mayor and all members of council, just a reminder that we plan to have a meeting on March 30th, moving the April 6th meeting to March 30th. I think one of the major items that I hope to discuss at that meeting is the capital improvement list, or the capital projects list. I think that was sent out by Robert Carr about a month and a half ago. It includes a 5-year project plan and a 10-year project plan. And those are just kind of generally suggestions about projects that have been on this capital project list for probably at least a year and a half now. And we're trying to narrow it down to what do we think is short term and what do we think is a longer term project. And also, all the potential funding that is available. And in some cases, we've already identified funding, or we went through a bond issue and we have funding. And in other cases, we don't have funding as of yet. And I think what this is also helpful, it's helpful for me because just understanding all the different projects that engineering and public works has going on, I think there's 100+ projects, and it's pretty hard when you get into it about identifying what you think are your highest priority projects and also trying to balance the funding that we have available. So I think it would be really helpful to kind of get together as a council and discuss those projects And I think we've had some feedback on what priorities certain counselors have, but talking about it as a group will also be helpful. So the governor had a press conference, I believe, on Thursday and talked about he's not going to require masks on state property, and he had some other updates. And I think there was confusion because I didn't see that he had updated or extended his emergency order that expired March 12th. And apparently he did extend that emergency order, albeit without some of the same requirements that had been in there previously. And so that was extended another 30 days through April 12th. And so as a part of that, as you'll recall, our mask mandate expires either at the end of his emergency declaration, or I think it was the end of May. And so that mandate, as voted on by the council, is still in effect. We've had some questions about the July 4th fireworks. As you'll recall, last year, the normal sponsors said that they just were not in a position to sponsor that event. And I believe the Jenks Public Works Authority might have stepped up to fund that event. I think it was $40,000. And I've received a call from the I think it's Rainbow Fireworks who usually does the show, and he said that the sponsors may not be able to sponsor this year, and he was wondering about the city council or JPWA's interest in participating at some level. And so I will continue talking with him, but I'm just giving you guys a heads up that, there might be a request that if we want to have that event this year, that, whether it's the aquarium, JPWA, or city might participate in some way. And then over the last 2 weeks, we've had some exciting grand openings and announcements at Melody Lane. The Cape Brewing is the first brewer in Jenks that opened, I believe, within the last month. And they had an event on last Wednesday that was very nice. And then they announced that there's going to be some new businesses coming to Jenks at the old location of the Sharp Company's building, which was an old gas station that has been removed. And so those are some exciting developments that I'm sure Josh Driscoll will touch on in his update. But beyond that, we're just trying to catch up with everything. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Chris, what's the, did I hear an approximate cost of the fireworks show? Did you say did we get $40,000 is what we paid last time?
I believe so.
We get a pretty good bang for a buck. I didn't mean to say bang for a buck. That was perfect. But, I wasn't there last year. Was it $40,000 worth? Is that an appropriate amount of money?
I believe so. I mean, Kenny, were you there?
Oh yeah, that was one of the best fireworks 4th of July events at our facility, as far as the enjoyment, people's feedback. You can look specifically on TripAdvisor. One gentleman said that he's been to fireworks shows all around the country, and this was by far the best. So I'd boo-hoo if it ended up going away, that's for sure.
And it brings a lot of money to local businesses and to the aquarium too, right?
Well, maybe we could consider kind of marketing this as a public-private partnership, and where if the council is willing to commit city dollars to this event, maybe we do a matching program, or we can kind of turn this into a marketing campaign where people can go online and make a pledge to contribute $10 for fireworks, and for every 10 they contribute, the city will match 10 or double, whatever. So we could have fun with this and really turn this into an Instagram, Facebook, Nextdoor. Let Katie and the public, let Katie and Josh Driscoll really have a lot of fun with this and drive this event, and without necessarily contributing the majority of the cost. So just something to think about if the council is willing to continue to fund this. I just don't want to get into a habit where every year the city council's paying for fireworks shows.
Yeah,
well, maybe even by the next meeting.
I was just going to say, sounds like a fun way to save a few bucks.
Yeah. Maybe we get a little committee together with Kenny and the chamber and just kind of throw some ideas around to how we could kind of market this to the people. I mean, our city tends to have some discretionary spending, some extra income. So this could be a fun thing to do for those diehards that want to get out and do it. Maybe get some corporate sponsors along the way. So just something to think about.
Hey, a question for Kenny. Excuse me, pardon me. Kenny, a question for you. Last year I was there at the fireworks display, and I thought it was absolutely wonderful. Was that the first year that we had the food trucks come out?
No, we've had our catering company that we are contracted with, Party Serve, always has various mobile food serving trucks, if you will. So no, we've always had food at the aquarium. However, out front.
Yes, yes, that's what I was asking about.
Yeah. So this was the first time we've had to that level of food trucks out front.
So I was thinking maybe they could donate a little bit of money to have a space for a food truck and get twice as many food trucks. There were probably 6 or 8, maybe 10 food trucks out there, and if we can expand on that, that will bring even more people out to spend, and of course the sales tax money from the food sales generated as well. But yeah, I thought that was really neat, the way that they were lined up and people were coming to them.
And it's really nice to see the playground be such an important part of the event. It really is the centerpiece, of entertainment outside. And, with it being lit up and everything, and it just brought the event to life like we've never seen. And really, I think, kept the kids interested in the evening and busy, and allowed the parents to take a break and enjoy themselves as well. So,
And I think that we can go into this at the next meeting when we'll probably have an agenda item on it.
Great ideas.
Sorry.
So unless there's questions for me, that's the end of my city manager report.
I'm going to make up some questions for the city manager here. Hold on. Give me a minute, guys.
I'm going to really quickly move on to the NCOG report from Councilor Isbell.
Okay. Our last NCOG meeting was last Tuesday afternoon, the 9th. And the major portion of discussion at the meeting was the American Rescue Plan, the $1.9 trillion bill that just passed, and the president signed last week. A lot of things that NCOG does is take care of the needy, the people that are in need in the Tri-County area. The American Rescue Plan, of course, is $1,400 per person for anybody making $75,000 or less, or family income, household income $150K or less will receive $1,400 per person, and that does include dependent children. The the bill also extends the federal unemployment to September 6th of this year, and the first $10,200 is not taxable for a household making less than $150,000. That was important to them. The bill also provides $7.25 billion for small business loans and nonprofits, with the businesses of 20 employees or fewer having first priority. There is also $128 billion to state educational agencies, and $40 billion to higher education. There is a formula to calculate the CDBG, Community Development Block Grants. On a side note, the NCOG board had provided $6 million in CDBG grants with a deadline of 3/31 if anybody was interested in applying for those grants. The state of Oklahoma would receive a minimum of $500 billion out of this bill, and that would be increased based on unemployment numbers in the fourth quarter of 2020. Also, $130 billion will be provided to local governments, and that includes $19.5 billion for towns in Oklahoma of less than 50,000. So that's where Jenks fits in. The cities of those sizes will get to share $19.5 billion. So we'll see a little bit of money depending on our needs. On to the legislative report. House Bill 2504 was discussed, and that's the State Commission of Health. And what that does is allows them to supersede. Let me back up. That allows the counties to prepare their own health department unless their population exceeds 500,000. So that would directly affect the Tulsa County and Oklahoma County. There's House Bill 2092, as well as 838 for public safety, and I can talk about those. National Disaster District Act, as well as the Public Safety Protection District Act, which would allow smaller communities to create a district for national disaster and or public safety. Those two bills were discussed briefly. There is also House Bill 1001, the Sergeant Johnson Metal Theft Act District. That would provide for people recycling goods to only use licensed dealers, as well as providing a driver's license, vehicle identification, tag number, and samples, descriptions of each item brought in for recycling. That would try to cut back on the copper theft that we see with the city lights. State Bill 403 was also discussed briefly, and that's public safety. That provides for state official business to not be interrupted by agitators or anybody that is not directly involved in said meeting. The next item is the Transportation Alternatives Program, TAP. 3.7 million in projects was allocated for sidewalks, trails, and bikes. Let me see if I can find that real quick. For the communities of Broken Arrow, Coweta, River Parks Authority, Tulsa County, City of Tulsa, and 2 other projects for the City of Tulsa. So we'll probably see a little bit of that with the River Parks Authority, and that's specifically for sidewalks, trails, and bikes. I did email all of you the Aging Area Plan update. That is a very solemn read. I've been through it, and it does list the needs of the people in Tulsa Creek and Osage County, the top things that are required for the aging in those communities are property maintenance, affordable dental care, telemarketing scams, in-home sales, assistive devices for glasses, hearing aids, as well as loneliness, isolation, transportation, and in-home personal care. Those are some items that were in desperate need in the Tri-County area. One of the items in the report itself said that they didn't quite meet their goals of last year. And of course, everyone knows that they could not provide the personal interaction with regard to COVID-19 and the spread of that. So hopefully things will be looking up for them. And if you have any questions on anything from last week's INCOG meeting, please give them to me. If I don't have the answers, I will get the answers.
I want to say, before we move on, Gary, thanks for bringing up Tri-County, because I happen to sit on that council. And it is a marvelous council out there that does help in those 3 counties. They've even done flooring in some of the kitchens, so that the seniors meet at. So it's an enormous project that is very well needed. Reagan does an extremely job of running it with the committees, and so, which I also sat on a committee. So I'm glad you brought that up, because Jenks benefits from that, and they receive, and Terry is got it very well organized on how she applies for applications.
All right. Very good. Any questions for Councilor Isbell on any of that? All right. Thank you, Gary, and thank you, Kay. We will move on to our first order of business, consideration and appropriate action relating to requests for approval of the consent agenda. Any questions or motions on the consent agenda?
I'll make the motion to approve the consent agenda as written.
I will second it.
All right, thank you. Let's vote.
Murray. Murray.
Yes.
Isbell.
Yes.
Box.
Yes.
Dyke.
Yes.
Kaylin.
Yes.
Mayor Lee.
Yes. We will pull item 2 and move on to item 3. Consider and adopt resolution number 729, approving the incurring of indebtedness by the Jenks Aquarium Authority in the principal amount of not to exceed $22 million for the purpose of providing funds to refinance and retire the Jenks Aquarium Authority's Series 2014 revenue bonds, to provide upgrades to the aquarium facility's critical infrastructure, and to provide new exhibits and attractions, authorizing sale thereof at a discount of not to exceed 1%, waiving competitive bidding thereon, and declaring an emergency. Chris, do you want to get us started on that?
Sure, I can start with kind of the high level purpose of this. So the existing JAA revenue bonds mature in 2034. And, we've been looking at different options on potentially things we could do to maybe retire that debt early or even refinance and get a better rate and possibly pay less over the next 13 years. And that's kind of what we've been focused on for the last few years. But recently with the storm that happened in February, Kenny really brought it to our attention, the priority of replacing the existing quarantine building. He was really concerned about the weight of the snow on the roof, and that building is compromised with a significant amount of rust. And, we were lucky that the snow was kind of a light powdery snow and not wet and heavy. And so it wasn't a great deal of weight on the roof. But I think just hearing that, those concerns related to just a snowfall and how concerned he was, it really has raised the priority level of replacing that building. And talking with Greg Helms, the whole building needs to be replaced, and to replace it and do it right and have it last for 50, 60 years is probably going to cost between $3 and $4 million. And so evaluating the aquarium's finances, we have about $4 million in the bank right now after kind of hemorrhaging money through COVID. And so it'd be, our goal is really to keep about that amount of money in the bank in case of emergencies, where we can kind of, we've been really lucky at the aquarium in that, we weren't laying people off like so many zoos and aquariums and museums across the country because we have a healthy fund balance. But we want to keep it that way. And so, if we were to go replace the quarantine building with our existing cash, we'd basically have no cash on hand at that point. And so we think that a viable alternative to that is to refinance and extend the existing debt another 10 years. And so we'd be issuing new revenue bonds in the amount not to exceed $22 million. And those new bonds would go to retire the existing, let's say, $13.7 million that matures in 2034. And then the new bonds wouldn't mature, generally speaking, would not mature until 2044. The reason that we've moved quickly on this is that we have extremely low interest rates, and even in the amount of time that we've been discussing this, the interest rates have gone up. But that's kind of the general overview of why we think this is important. And, that facility overall, the aquarium's 20 years old. It's coming up on its 20th birthday. It'll be, 30 years old before these bonds are even, the existing bonds are even retired. So we think there's significant maintenance that is coming up that we need to have the cash on hand to reinvest in the facility. And Robert Sauceda is also here to discuss the details of the refinancing. And Greg Nito, our financial advisor, is also on the call. And I would just note that the reason the JAA being a public trust and the city of Jenks being the beneficiary, the city of Jenks must approve any debt related to its public or its related entities, and the JPWA, and in turn, in a way, the city both backstop the JAA debt. And so this resolution needs to be approved by a supermajority of both the JAA, JPWA, and the city The JAA just approved this at the meeting prior to the city council meeting. So with that, and Kenny's also on the line if you have questions specific about the quarantine building, but maybe I'd let Robert Sauceda describe some of the details related to the financing a little bit more.
Right. So the numbers that were kind of generated, say 4 weeks ago, looked at the current debt that we had and we're currently paying say 3% to 4%, and the new numbers would have us kind of a little bit more below 3%. And again, this was speaking about 4 weeks ago. The situation has changed with the U.S. Treasury yields increasing, and now the option to refinance the current bonds and achieve, here are our three targets: to keep our current debt service at 1.2 million. That is what we currently pay on the old bonds, and that's what we wish to pay on the new bonds. We do not want to change what we pay annually. And also the length of the maturity of the new bonds not to exceed 25 years from now. So you're looking at 2046. And also in the process, in issuing the new bonds, to net $7.5 million. That's money in the bank, cash in hand, after paying the issuance costs, after paying our financial advisor, our bond counsel, and that's the $7.5 million that would go into investing in our in the infrastructure, like the quarantine building, generators, etc. And go ahead.
And Robert, I might stop you there because we really went into the weeds on this in the JAA, which is totally fine and we're happy to do, but maybe we can stop there and see, are there any questions on anything that we've discussed so far?
Are you borrowing $7 million new dollars, or are you finding savings by restructuring this debt and applying that savings to investment in the aquarium?
We owe $13.7 million, right? Okay. We are talking about issuing up to $22 million in new bonds, so a totally separate debt. 13.7 of the new debt is going to go into escrow and will pay off the old debt. And when we're talking about the $7.5 million cash in hand net, that's after issuing the new debt, paying any fees, and then paying off the old debt. And then we're making payments now, like moving forward, we'd be making payments on the new debt because the old debt that matures in 2034 would be retired.
Yeah.
I don't know if does that make sense?
Yeah, so let me give you this scenario. Let's talk about the example of a home refinance. When most homeowners look at refinancing their mortgage, they say, hey, I'm paying $1,000 a month now for my mortgage at 4%. Somebody makes them an offer to refinance at 3%. Well, the first thing they do is they kind of run the calculators and they say, what is the cost of doing this? And how better off am I financially when this is all said and done? Yes, your mortgage is now extended out into the future, but how much are you going to save every month amortized over the course of the mortgage minus all your closing costs? So I guess my question to you is, how much better are we financially in pursuing this option? So give this to us in the terms of the example I just gave you. Are we restructuring this debt to do capital improvements at the aquarium, or is our debt currently really need to be restructured because it's unfavorable?
No, the existing debt is fine and is favorable. I mean, we could continue on. Yeah, the issue is we have things that need to be upgraded at the facility, and we don't have the cash to do it, to reinvest in. Yeah, okay.
Good, thank you.
There was a lot of discussion, Corey, in the JAA meeting in regards to going out basically on a limb doing this. And Chris and Robert both are fully aware as with what's going on, and they both, being as transparent as possible, are going to be providing information to the JAA, which in turn gets back to the city council. Yeah. That if the numbers don't do what it needs to, we can put it on hold or kind of put the halt to it.
Yeah, I logged into the last 15 or 20 minutes of your discussion. Good. And I wasn't surprised to hear Harvey kind of beating it to death a little bit, which I'm glad. That's what we need, people to beat this up from both sides, because this is $22 million of somebody else's money. It's not my money, and it's something we need to take very seriously because it's not our money. So. And I'm guessing, Mr. Murray, from the general consensus of JAA is that you guys, it was a majority approval, or was it a unanimous approval?
Unanimous.
Okay.
And we did add some additional guardrails in that meeting. And maybe Robert or Chris wants to detail those just so we know what those are.
Figuratively speaking, right, Mayor? Guardrails?
Very good. We added some velvet ropes.
Bookends, according to Harvey.
Bookends, yeah. Harvey called them bookends.
We just talked about, the parameters being not to extend beyond 2046 and the length of the term, and, cash in hand after all of the fees and paying off the old debt being 6.75 million, and keeping the annual debt payment at an average of the same as the average of the previous debt.
Are we currently servicing 1.2 per year? Is that what you said?
Yeah, we're paying about 1.2.
Give or take, a little over sometimes.
Yeah.
But it's not more than 1.3, basically, again.
As long as, Robert and Chris, as long as your attitude is always you're gambling with someone else's money, and you keep that in mind, for the most part, you're always going to have our support.
And maybe Kenny, we've got Kenny on the line. Maybe he could tell us a little bit about, how this is going to benefit the aquarium and how it's going to help with our operations, and also how it's going to allow us to invest further in possible revenue generation.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll talk to the camera so you can see me better. So, like Chris was saying, the shark quarantine facility, which is a necessary facility for the long-term care of our larger animals, was built before the aquarium actually was built. When we built that facility, our funding wasn't what it is like today, and so even though we knew what the ideal building how it should be built, the funding just wasn't available. So the facility is basically a red iron garage like you would have at an auto repair shop or something, and a lot of the mechanical that goes along with it, such as the air conditioning and heating, etc., was not designed for a corrosive environment. So the facility over the years has taken quite a beating with the salt and humidity from obviously the salt water that's exposed with the tanks, and it's just basically has the cancer, and it's slowly eroding, and so we just don't feel like we have the time, the 10 years or whatever to pay off our debt in order to have the money to replace this facility. And my big concern is that it does house high profile animals that are in our care, and we're up for almost any emergency, but a complete building failure is not one of them. So that's like one of the most pressing things. So the new facility would be built in the way that our new wet lab is, to handle that kind of corrosive environment that would last years on end. And it would be designed also so the public could enjoy the building through tours and it'd be a lot more tour friendly, that kind of thing. And as far as other opportunities outside of fixing infrastructure, we do have opportunities that we can use some of the money to actually create further revenue, which would be smart, and in the long run, honestly, pay itself back.
Okay,
Now
thanks.
I'm
So
gonna let
if so, if we don't make rebuild the quarantine, just a normal, I mean, maybe we don't get just giant snowfalls every winter, that is, but it's not unusual for us to have a lot of snowfall in the winter. It's conceivable that that could happen and destroy that building and a lot of what's inside it.
Yeah, that's right, and not just snow. I mean, wind. The reality is maybe even more likely that we have damage from wind. That we have these summer storms and tornadoes and that kind of thing. I'm not a structural engineer, but I think it's fairly obvious.
Yeah.
Well, I think you talked also, Kenny, that some of the building itself was not really moisture friendly, water friendly inside, I think. And you talked about epoxy floors and things going along that line. So it really could go a long ways.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. A new facility would be completely built to be corrosive resistant. Like you were saying, with the all metal would be shot with epoxy. The floors would be epoxy. There'd be water stops along the walls. The air conditioning system would be a complete 100% makeup air, and what that means is that you're not recirculating the salty air through your air handler. You're bringing in outside fresh air, cooling or heating it one pass, and then it's being exhausted. And then what that does as well is, because that's exchanging your ambient air so much, that your humidity levels and the salt in the air is actually reduced, which further prolongs equipment and structures. And finally, and I didn't bring this up earlier, but I think it's worth mentioning that one of the main purposes of that facility is for our bull sharks. And we do have a backup generation right now growing. The main tank in there is 100,000 gallons. It's an 80 by 40 foot tank, and it is fiberglass, but that is not ideal for a bull shark when it reaches maturity, getting past 200 to 300 pounds. That animal could do some considerable damage to a fiberglass tank if it hits it, and it could cause complete failure of that tank. And if you can imagine what 100,000 gallons dumping all at once would do. And so the new building would have a concrete tank built in it, which would give us a lot of peace of mind knowing that there can not be any kind of structural failure should a shark hit it in the night or what have you. Again, it's something we already knew, but it just was not feasible at the time, and the building has served us well. But I think it's time to to upgrade.
Good.
That leads to the question I had. Is it just the building or the habitats too? And the answer is, it is a complete replacement.
It is, and it just, when you look at it, it's just on and on and on. The entire air conditioning system of 3 large units is just hanging on by a thread, and so you have the structure itself. The floors are pitting really bad. The decking is starting to get water damage. The tank itself really is kind of, right now is fine. Our sharks are only about 100 to 120 pounds, but in 6 or 7 years, that's going to be, it's going to be hard to sleep at night, knowing the potential.
Right, and I know a guy that can build all the new filtration systems, so we've got that money savings going for us there. So,
and oddly enough, the filtration does not need to be upgraded. It's doing great.
No, I was thinking complete net new is what I was after.
Hey, Kenny, where are you guys looking at building that? Would that be in the same vicinity?
Well, there's some discussions on it being better to be moved further south next to the shark exhibit, kind of tucked in. We haven't identified the exact spot. One of the reasons being is, when we do regular maintenance dives in the shark exhibit, and the dive shop and everything is in the shark quarantine facility, which means it's on the other side of the complex. So having it closer would be a lot easier. Also, moving sharks, though we can move sharks cross country if we wanted, but if we were to move a shark on or off exhibit, it is nicer for it to be right there. Also, the current location of the shark exhibit is on some great real estate that we can probably put to better use commercially to help the aquarium later, is another thing to think about.
Thank you.
Well, the idea of doing something, to replace everything is wonderful. I know it's easy to put Band-Aids on things to try to get by, and you guys have done a wonderful job doing that as it's been. But yeah, as the mayor said, we may not get another snowstorm like that, but as you say, we do have a lot of wind, and we could have an air conditioner go out tomorrow. So yeah, I appreciate anything we can do to get this up to standard and have something even better for people to come see, or at least there to take care of our animals.
Absolutely.
Was there any discussion in the JAA meeting about the roof for the entire facility and repairs there or replacement?
No, but that would be a consideration for the use of these funds.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, this is a good way to protect our investment while also having some money to invest further. Sada and Christopher and Greg and Chris Byram also have been a big help on all this. Are there any other questions about the bond itself or any of the specifics there?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I will second.
All right, thank you. Let's vote.
Murray,
Yes.
Isbell,
Yes.
Fox,
Yes.
Dyke,
Yes.
Kaylin,
Yes.
Mayor Lee.
Yes. And then we'll move on to item 4, consider and adopt resolution number 730, approving the Jenks Public Works Authority.
Could I interject?
Sure.
With that particular resolution, there's an emergency clause to it.
Yes, that I think is at the end of item 4 here.
Okay, I apologize.
Oh, it's okay. I think I'm reading that correctly.
No, item 4 relates to the replenishment agreement. If we could get a separate vote on the emergency.
Do you see any problem with that, staff?
No. So
Okay.
Chris Byram, you're saying item 3 is, we declared the emergency in item 3, but you want a separate vote on that too?
Please, by statute, we need a separate vote on it.
Okay. On resolution 729.
Well, in Chris, yeah, it's declared also in number 4, but it's not the typical format that we have with an emergency clause. So I think that's what it states.
Okay.
Yeah, we normally have 3 items to vote on.
Yeah.
That's fine.
So do you want to vote to declare an emergency for item number 3?
No, item number 3 declares the emergency. We can approve number 4, and then we can issue
That's
this.
a
We
separate
can also,
resolution though.
yes.
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 Yeah, I think we need an emergency clause for 3 and 4.
So if you just declare an emergency for item number 3.
Okay. Okay, so
I
we have a
move to
motion
declare an emergency. I can do that. I move to declare an emergency for item number 3. Emergency clause.
Second.
Okay, let's vote.
Murray,
Yes.
Isbell,
Yes.
Fox,
Yes.
Dyke,
Yes.
Kaylin,
Yes.
Mayor Lee.
Yes, and thank you, Chris Byram, for making sure we're on the up and up there.
Thank you for your patience.
Sure. All right. So we'll move to 4. Consider and adopt Resolution 730, approving the Jenks Public Works Authority and the Jenks Aquarium Authority entering into a replenishment agreement with respect to indebtedness to be incurred by the Jenks Aquarium Authority and declaring an emergency, even though we may declare another emergency in just a minute.
So moved. Item number 4.
Second.
All right. Thank you. Let's vote.
Murray,
Yes.
Isbell,
Yes.
Box,
Yes.
Dyke,
Yes.
Kaylin,
Yes.
Mayor
Yes. And are there any motions to declare an emergency on item 4?
So moved.
And seconded.
All right. Thank you. Let's vote.
Murray,
Yes.
Isbell,
Yes.
Box,
Yes.
Dyke,
Yes.
Kaylin,
Yes.
Mayor
Yes. All right. Thanks again to Robert Sauceda, Greg Nito, and Chris Byram, Chris Shrout for all your work on this. This is, I think, going to be a big help for us.
Thank you.
We'll move on to item 5, request to approve JZ21 PUD 125, a request from Greg Helms for an amendment to the comprehensive plan land use map to local commercial and a rezoning from RS1 residential single family to OL office low intensity and a PUD. The general location is 556 West K Place. Ms. Hilton, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council, and staff. This item is an application by Greg Helms on behalf of the Kearns family. They're a local business owner. The project represents 3 actions, but it can be 1 vote. The comprehensive plan amendment is first in consideration, and I would not recommend, and you should not, in fact, approve the zoning and PUD without the comprehensive plan amendment. So just stating that, so I will take it as 1 vote as it is listed. The comprehensive plan currently was adopted in 2020, late 2020. The PUD allows for, in that area, we've talked about this before because we've done another amendment. It's a real mix along K Street. You've got single family, you've got high intensity residential, you've got some office, some commercial, and some industrial. So it was kind of a guess which direction the properties might go in the future. And this one is one of those that is currently zoned RS1. And Mr. Helms contacted me and asked if I thought we could get an office zoning approved. My first thought was, well, we want to do single family here or high intensity single family. But once I heard the project, I was certainly on board, and I think you will be as well. So the comprehensive plan amendment, like I said, would be to allow for local commercial. And there is local commercial adjacent to it, but it is separated by the railroad tracks on the west. The PUD would allow for a private screened washed gravel lot to the south end of the property line and a reduction in the front yard setback. So if you're reading along with me in your staff report, you're going to see rear yard, and you can make a little note there that Marseille made an error, and that is not correct. So it got a little bit complicated. But anyway, staff has no problem with the change to office. The Planning Commission did hear this and voted unanimously to support all 3 requests. The PUD is PUD 125, and that is on top of an office light zoning. There were no public comments at the time of, up till now, I haven't had any comments, including at the Planning Commission meeting outside of the Planning Commission. So the new use would be an office use. If you want to look on page 212 of your agenda packet, the property is unplatted, and our code says in multiple places that when the property is unplatted and there's a zone change, it does require platting. The applicant and the owners are aware of that requirement. It talks about on the zoning, and this is what I was pointing out to you. North is an RM2, which is Summit Apartments. To the east, you have RS1 courtyards of Jenks, and then they kind of curve around the bottom portion of that lot. So, and then we have on the west the railroad tracks, and then across the way you see that commercial shopping, which is also owned by the Kearns family, and they do operate their business currently there. On page 213 is a picture of the comprehensive plan with an arrow. Then it just goes into some language which most of you are familiar with. When you're looking at the approving a planned unit development, you have to consider, does it fit, etc. So on page 214 of the staff report, it says this, in the evaluation, this project provides a new structure, additional parking for commercial vehicles as related to the current construction business needs. Staff is in agreement with the office use in lieu of high density single family as projected in the comprehensive plan. So if you were to approve it, you would be approving the comprehensive plan amendment to allow for local commercial. You would be approving a rezoning from RS1 to OL, and you would be approving a PUD 125. That PUD is going to give them relief along West K Street. So basically they're moving that building up to the property line and putting the parking in the rear, if that makes sense to you. So I love it. It matches the adjacent properties. I did write form instead of from. I apologize for that. I would point out that I don't know what I was doing. I really got mixed up when I was writing this. I thought I corrected it because I knew it was wrong, but either I didn't correct it or I corrected it and did it wrong. They are not asking for 20 feet to 50. It's if you were going to get a straight office zoning, it would require you to set that building back 50 feet. And they are asking to set it back only 20 feet to match those adjacent properties. So my other condition of approval, plating is required in number 5. When considering a PUD, is it consistent with the comprehensive plan? We've already gone through this. It is not, but staff has no problem making that amendment. I think it fits well within the area. And we weren't sure which direction those properties would go, and I think this is a good fit. Does the PUD harmonize with existing and expected development? I think it does. Is the PUD a unified treatment development treatment? I think it is. And with that being said, they're doing their best to keep the very large tree towards the south end of the property. They're also providing the neighbors adjacent on the east with a privacy fence, along with screening of heavily landscaped with trees. And is the PUD consistent with the stated purposes and standards of the chapter? And I would agree to that as well. So with that being said, staff and planning commission do recommend approval of the comprehensive plan amendment and the rezoning, including PUD 125. If you look at the next page on page 215, you get an aerial shot. I did a Google Street View, so you're there on the railroad tracks looking east towards the river. You can see the existing property. Move down the street a little bit, there's an old structure there. They do, at this point, intend to keep that structure, I believe. If you look on page 217 is the introduction letter from Mr. Helms, and then the actual PUD. And it clearly states that the setback relief is to reduce from 50 foot to 20 foot to match adjacent properties. Sorry, I botched that up so badly. On page 220 is a really nice aerial shot, kind of zoomed in. You can see those properties. The north edge of that property line is K Street or K Place, and you can see those properties to the east are very close. They're about 20 feet. And that's what they plan to do, is match that really nice. You also see on page 231 that line of trees and the screening. So Mr. Helms did a really great job putting all that together for us. On page 222, there's a nice rendering. It's kind of a bird's eye view for you with a 3,200 square foot office. The existing building as shown in this aerial view, and then the washed gravel parking and equipment. There were quite a few questions from the Planning Commission, but in the end, they did not have any issues at all, and they definitely recommended approval. So let me ask at this point, Mr. Helms, are you available on the phone if the council has questions?
Yes,
Mr. Okay, great. So the applicant is present if you have questions for him, and if you have questions for me, I'll do my very best to answer them.
All right, thank you. Any questions from council on this?
Well, I will start on some of it. I had a call from a resident that lives close to there. They were concerned that there are some flooding issues before anything is ever built there, as it is pre-existing. And of course, their concern is, well, is this going to add to the flooding? I mean, putting the trees up, and there is already a privacy fence. I assume they're going to put up a new privacy fence. Is that my understanding then?
I will let, I believe I asked, but I'll let Mr. Helms confirm that. And in regards to flooding, I'm going to give you my standard answer. And that tonight we're talking about land use, and platting is required. That will also require full drainage report and a drainage study. And the city engineer will be heavily involved in that process, and he will be looking at that drainage plan and making sure that they have adequately provided, and that there is no increase of flooding in that area, and that they do all that the state and local requirements.
Okay. Well, before Greg answers, I noticed in the very south end of that, outside of the property line, or maybe there is like a little bitty retention area. So I assume that there is the capability of something that running off. But yes, go ahead, Greg, and at least answer what I hit you with.
So first, regarding the fence, I believe the existing fence is 6 foot tall. If the property owners would like that fence to remain, that's fine. We're offering to increase that to 8 feet. We certainly wouldn't mind coordinating that with the adjacent property owners, whichever their preference is. And as far as the flooding, obviously we have to meet all the DEQ requirements, whether that's detention or retention on our property, and not allowing any more water off any faster than it's leaving now.
Good. Okay. Looking at the picture on 222, I guess you guys are building a new building that's going to be the 20-foot line off of K Street, and it looks to me like the parking lot is going to be of an asphalt concrete, or at least a solid. But the south end, it was discussed on gravel, and I know they talked about the planning of a dustless gravel. Is that the wording I understood, Marseille?
Mr. Helms calls it washed gravel.
Washed, okay.
That is a product.
And that they're going to put equipment back there. And I know that the Planning Commission discussed whether or not that they'd ever approved something like that. And they said, yeah, there is something else approved. Going back to my old school in Tulsa, if something was parked on a parking lot, on a yard, it had to be something of a permanent nature. Asphalt, concrete, and I'm not sure that the gravel would fit that. I don't know if we have an ordinance or not against that. So I just would kind of like to head that off if possible. I don't know if Chief's online, that maybe he would be able to help on that.
We do require a dust-free surface. A lot of times if you had a vehicle or something that you parked in your backyard, and the public can't see it, they're not going to go in and say, hey, you need to get that on a dust-free surface. It's a little bit different for commercial entities, and essentially this PUD is asking for a waiver from the dust-free surface requirement by asking for the washed gravel. I've never worked with that product before. I am assuming that because it is washed, that it cuts down considerably on the dust in the area. And so another thought, and Leon Davis, our planning commissioner, made this comment that depending on which school of thought you're coming from, gravel is less pervious than concrete. And if you already have some drainage issues, you're probably better off having gravel instead of a solid concrete
structure, or something. Yeah.
No, so it was kind of I think at the end of the day, they saw it as a sort of compromise where you're doing your best to get a dust-free surface. It's not an approved dust-free surface, so therefore allowing it in this PUD comes as a waiver request to the council, which is why I brought it up about 3 different places in the staff report.
No, it's good. And I think with what Greg said about potentially an 8-foot fence, if it's not dust-free, it would at least reduce a lot of that. I think that's a wonderful offer, and I hope that the residents there maybe take advantage of and not try to add money to this. But one other question, I guess, now there are two buildings there, and I know you said that one of the they talked about leaving them. Is the frontal building closer to Case Place? Is that the one that's going to be incorporated in the new office? Is it going to be torn down, or they?
The front building adjacent to K is a house, and that one gets leveled, and then the rear barn type structure would remain.
Looks more like a garage or something. Yeah. Okay, good. Thank you.
Hey, Marseille.
Yes.
Talking about the water over there, and I know Chris Cloy and all that, but what I'm wondering is, since we already know we have the problem with the flooding again in this part of town, would this be a place that we should look into a hydrology study? Because, and let me tell you, the railroad tracks that goes through there is already elevated. It's probably, how tall are our tracks? Maybe 3 or 4 feet. And so it already sheds onto this property. And so if we start taking away some of the drainage from there that's already shedding, that's going to increase more shedding to the east. So that's where I have a little bit of a concern with. You already have that elevation because I have the same problem. And is that, again, my question is to take into consideration the shedding off of the railroad tracks onto the property. Would that, is that a place for hydrology study to protect everybody?
Sure. I personally do not believe it needs to be part of the recommendation. I believe that when you're moving through the platting and site plan process, when you go, the preliminary plat shows the grade every 2 feet. So it tells you where the water's draining to, and it tells you, and Chris Cloyd is very aware, and he will be able to discern if they need to go further with a hydrology report. He'll be able to study that area. Where does the water go now? They'll show all of that and have that conversation during that process. If you want to make it that, I'm not opposed to that, but I don't think it's necessary tonight. It literally is, do you want to allow someone in the future with enough money to fix the hydrology to build an office building with a washed gravel parking in the rear?
So in other words, we're going to get a second look at the plat in the near future.
You will get a look at the site plan / plat in the future.
Okay.
We can beat it up then.
Okay.
Well, it's nice to get these things out now so we can get them answered for the citizens that are concerned about it, so that we're more prepared when the plat comes too, though.
Yeah.
But no, Marseille, we won't be talking about the gravel and all that in the plat, will we?
Oh, no, you won't talk about the gravel. You would just be talking about, basically, when the plat comes, and we've gone through this, it is not a second stab at killing a project. It's more or less ironing out and making sure that everything's done. And you have an outstanding engineering staff who is extremely qualified, and I trust them to get the job done and do it to the best of their ability and following all of the requirements. There are just an enormous amount of requirements from the state and the local level, and I trust them to get that done.
I have one more question, please, because with our owners present, they're probably the only ones that can answer it. We talk about their equipment. There's a lot of thing called equipment. That's kind of an umbrella statement. I'd like to have a little bit of a insight, or what is the equipment they're going to put back there?
Okay, I'll let Mr. Helms answer that question for you. That is a very good question. Thank you, Councilor Lynn.
Okay, well, I want to back up just one item before, because I think it'll help answer your question. So what we're asking for is not gravel parking for the office building. That would be, asphalt parking, which certainly has, daily traffic in and out. The back area, the equipment storage area is what we're asking for the gravel.
Right.
This is exactly the same scenario that was approved for their current location. So currently right now, behind their fenced area at their office on the corner is all the same equipment, this same gravel we used there. So to my knowledge, there have been no complaints from the neighbors with the existing setup. So I don't anticipate it being, any different than what they're currently doing. They're expanding their office building now, so we just need a place to relocate, some of their construction stuff, just to kind of have a screened yard to put their equipment in. But it wouldn't be the daily coming and going parking area. We would do that, typical asphalt, just like, is required everywhere else.
Yeah, so the equipment would go out like in the morning and come back in the evening, basically be parked overnight is what probably would happen.
Yeah, and it may not even be a daily.
Well, sure. I mean, if they have a call, right. Yeah. Right. One thing I noticed though, Greg, in driving by their current facility, and this even kind of came up, I think, real quick mention was the gravel, dissipates or is displaced, and then you've got mud and dirt that's kind of showing us. How is that maintained? Is there requirements for that, or maybe Marseille? I don't know. Is that something that would have to be discussed or looked at? That if you're going to have that you at least maybe have to resurface or re-gravel every year or two. I don't know. I'm asking. I don't know.
We don't currently have anything in the code. I think that's something that we can talk about. The code enforcement going through the building process has a very rigid set of guides that you have to do whenever you're cleaning a lot or whatever to keep the storm drains free of debris. And I think that if it ever became an issue, then and there was gravel being tracked out onto the street, it can certainly be a code complaint, and we can go out and investigate it. At that time, they would be made aware that it part of the requirements would be to keep the gravel off of the street. It makes it
right. No, I understand, but I'm even saying the parking lot itself back there where the gravel is, that if it gets displaced enough that enough rains or something could cause some gullies or whatever. I'm just asking to ask, I guess.
Yeah, there's nothing in our code, Councilor Murray, that would require us to add anything. If there's some language that pops into your head that you would like to add to as a condition of approval, we can entertain that. I am not aware of anything. I think it feels like they've done a pretty good job from what I've seen on the corner there of maintaining their lot as it is, and I would expect the same level of service from them moving forward.
Like I said, I drove by today and I noticed that there's gravel displaced in there, and I was just wondering about that. If we're talking about in the future water issues on the east of there, that if the gravel's displaced enough and mud and stuff, but just something to keep in mind, I guess.
If I could speak, if I could speak to the equipment issue again, please. The reason that I'm asking about the equipment issue is noise, because if you've got large pieces of equipment, you're going to have noise. What sits directly across the street from this, and I'm not opposed to it at all. I'm playing devil's advocate here. If we're going to be leaving with loud equipment at 5 o'clock in the morning, we have apartments that sit right across the street. And I can already hear my emails going off.
Well, there's houses right next door.
Yeah.
Pardon?
Townhouses next door.
Right next door. There's apartments across the street, but there's houses right next door.
So we've got that surrounding area there. And this may be for when it comes back to council discussion. So if that's the case, I'll be okay with that. But I just wanted to draw everybody's attention to the fact that depending on what the equipment is, the noise level is where I'm going with that for the apartments and those townhouses. I forgot that, Christopher. Yes.
It would be to discuss tonight. It wouldn't be something we would discuss during the platting. So it would definitely, that conversation is for tonight for part of the PUD. And I'm guessing, and Mr. Helms can correct me if I'm wrong, that most of it will come and go on a trailer. I don't think they'll be driving much off of the lot.
Yeah, that's, we've already got that issue down there, and so I just don't want to create another one.
Absolutely.
So would it be, and I'm asking for help here, would it be feasible to put a time frame, since I don't know what the equipment is, that they couldn't come out earlier than 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 6:30, something like that along that, because at 6 o'clock people are usually getting up and going to work. That's all I'm asking.
Mr. Helms, is the applicant here? Is there anybody from the actual business who can, I mean, we've got an
They're out
8-foot
of town
fence.
this week.
Huh?
They're out of town this week.
Okay.
But I would say again, they have this exact operation going on 100 feet away from this property.
That's what I was going to say. They're already doing the same thing just across the railroad tracks. Has anyone ever complained about that there?
The question that I would ask before I could answer that is, where do they exit from there onto Elm? Or do they exit onto K Place? It depends on where they're going to exit, because they sit on the corner lot of K Place and Elm. And so if it sits on the south side of the building, I'm going to make a guess here, since I know the lay of the land down there, that they're exiting on to Elm and not K Place.
I believe they're exiting onto K Place. That's where the big gate is facing K Place.
That's what I thought, but I definitely could be wrong.
And there's no residents across the street from there.
Currently, they're exiting on K Place?
K Place.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Mr. Helms, do you know the type of equipment, and are they generally moved on trailers?
Yes, it's trailered equipment, whether it's a small bobcat or concrete forms. I mean, any sort of typical construction items.
So I think it's safe to say this is a storage facility for heavy equipment. This is not a workshop where people are grinding rebar. This is where a trailer pulls in on a gravel. The reason it's a wet gravel is because the trailer and the bobcat and the backhoe are extremely heavy, and nobody wants to repair asphalt and concrete repeatedly every couple of years. So that's really a necessity. So if this is the typical Kearns operation, they're pulling in to grab something, putting it on a trailer, and then hauling it away. My guess is the majority of the sound that you might hear would be, I'm not going to call it an 18-wheeler, but whatever the size of a vehicle is that is needed to pull one of these large trailers is probably going to be the extent of the sound that will be experienced by the neighbors, assuming this is very similar or typical to what Kearns does next door. This is not a place where you'll find workers going in and out grinding rebar and doing welding. This is more of a storage facility. That would be my guess, just based on having seen the previous place that they have next door. I don't know if that alleviates your concerns, but I would be almost willing to bet that that's probably what this is.
Sure, and I'm not trying to create an issue here where there's not an issue, but I think it's something that we needed to talk about from previous times, and set they not leave. So that's all I'm bringing up. So if we have to come back and we have to revisit this because of complaints, I want some kind of safeguard in for the citizens.
Sure. In the new facility, it looks like, Corey, those 18-wheelers are going to have to drive across the asphalt new parking lot anyway to get to the rock back in the back. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's at their own peril. I mean.
Oh, sure. No, right.
Yeah.
Are they moving offices? Do we know that, or is that any of our business? I mean, they're going to have the building on the corner and then this building, and they're just expanding what they have.
That's what I understand.
Business is growing, then that's great.
Yeah.
I just want to safeguard in case we have to come back to this, Marseille.
Well, that is you are the council is free to make any conditions on this. If you want a time constraint, you are free to make that time constraint for sure.
I would like to say 6 o'clock, then a.m.
Okay, and be sure when the motion is made, if you are all in agreement and you want to do so, or if Councilman makes a motion, include that in the actual motion.
Okay.
You know, I've worked with heavy equipment, you know, summer jobs in college and high school and so forth. And some of those summer days, you get out there, you want to get out there before 6 o'clock because, you know, it's going to get just brutally hot at 8 o'clock. So without really knowing too much about what the equipment is or what, you know, how loud it is, or, you know, if there have been complaints in the past, I don't know if I'm comfortable with putting a time limit like that on them. You know, I'd be happy to learn more about it, but I could see this severely limiting their operation, especially in the hot summer months.
Well, you're absolutely right, Mayor. And I don't have a problem with that, but I've already been through it down there with one business that's in the area, and Marseille and several of us worked on it because they were allowed to start at 5 o'clock in the morning. And there is a very large percent of neighbors down there that are being intruded with the noise. And so I think that this is something that we have to look at, citizen protection, and make it a balanced situation. That's all I'm trying to do here, since we've got apartments and townhomes and everything right there by them and closer than the neighbors are. And we spent, I don't know how many weeks working on this other project, trying to make it come to fruition and make it appropriate and agreeable to all. So that's the only reason that I'm asking to put the 6 o'clock out time. I get the heat of the day, I get all of that. But I also understand the citizens that live around there should have an opportunity. Since I don't know the equipment, that's why I'm just jabbering here, because I don't know the equipment, and I get the deal about trailers and stuff like that. So that's what we have to think about, the whole area, not just one square box.
I think the thing is, we haven't had any complaints about the current company they have there, and they're already moving equipment as it is. And we haven't had any citizens' concerns. We did get a concern about drainage. And I think what you're talking about with the other sound is a little bit different. That's an ongoing sound if you're talking about the work at the gym down the street. So I don't think it's really comparing apples to apples. I think it's great that they are expanding their business within the city of Jenks, and we should be able to support them in that. I'm not in favor of a time frame myself. I'm just putting that out there.
Yeah, the school buses use K Place a lot too when they're coming out of the school bus barn, and they're probably louder sometimes than some of the vehicles could be, K. But then again, yeah, their times are whatever.
But that's a good point, Greg.
You know,
I just don't want to have to do this again.
I would say this, guys. I think I would agree with the mayor. I don't think we know it. We don't have enough information. I'm not a fan of being a big government and slapping down a 6 o'clock rule on a business that I don't know really anything about. I don't think most of us on the call tonight really truly know the inner details of the operations at Kearns. It is unfortunate that the applicant couldn't be here, and I think if they were, we might be able to actually come to a vote tonight. I'm not prepared to support a time restriction without having any more information than we do. If we had more information, I would be there with you, and we can certainly discuss it. Sure. This almost reminds me of maybe something we should consider as a council, and that rather than creating passing plats and PUDs with time prescriptions, maybe we should just consider, something that HOAs do. It's called a good neighbor policy, and we ask businesses to sign it. And if you have a business that has at least 10 homes within 500 feet, I'm just throwing out numbers that, they consider a good neighbor policy, and that they signed a verbal or a handshake agreement with the surrounding community saying, hey, look,
we understand we have heavy equipment operators, and it's our commitment whenever possible that we will not pull our equipment out prior to 7 a.m. in the morning. And should we need to do so, we'll drop a note in somebody's mailbox or whatever. But I don't think we should create ordinances and necessarily laws and pass things with such little information. So I agree with Kaylin, but I also agree with the mayor. We can either not do anything tonight, or I think we could probably, to Kaylin's point, this is something that's important, but I don't think we're going to solve it tonight when it comes to this particular item on the agenda. So without more information, I would hesitate that we consider the 7 of us having the power to kind of. This is Kearns. They're a very, very good corporate neighbor for the city of Jenks, and I don't know how many homes are actually within the radius of this place, but we have obligations to both, and maybe without the information, we don't have enough information tonight to do any restrictions. But Kay's point is well noted, and it's true. But I think you guys know I'm not prepared to put any restrictions on this vote tonight.
That's why I was wondering if I could do it when it comes back, when we have more information. But thanks everybody for listening.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I know you're just trying to protect the citizens and protect their peace there. And but yeah, I really like what Councilor Box was saying about the good neighbor agreement, and if that's something we can look into and see what other cities are doing there, I think that'd be a good idea.
Yep.
Councilor Isbell, did you have your hand up a few minutes ago?
Yes, I did. It's a question for Greg. Specific to the drawing on page 221, and of course this is not the final plat, and we'll see that later. Have they provided adequate parking for an office building of this size?
Yes, we're proposing a 3,200 square foot office building and 8 parking spaces, which is 1 per 400, which meets the zoning code.
Okay, I just wanted to qualify that because I couldn't remember exactly what the square footage was. I thought it was 400, but I wasn't certain. Just wanted to make sure we cover our bases. When I first looked at this entire project, I saw the front elevation, a couple of tenants, artist renderings on the following pages. And I was like, where are the customers going to park? But, however, the parking is provided behind the building and it is adequate. So, with that being said, I have no further questions. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Any motions?
So moved. Item number 5.
I will second that.
All right, thank you. Let's vote.
Murray,
Yes.
Isbell,
Yes.
Box,
Yes.
Dyke,
Yes.
Kaylin,
Yes.
Merrily.
Yes. Item 6, request to approve ordinance number 1546 related to JZ 21 PUD 125.
So moved.
So moved. I'll second that.
All right, thank you. Let's vote.
Murray,
Yes.
Isbell,
Yes.
Box,
Yes.
Dyke,
Yes.
Kaylin,
Yes.
Merrily.
Yes. Item 7, request to approve emergency clause for ordinance number 1546, making it effective immediately upon passage.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Let's vote.
Murray,
Yes.
Isbell,
Yes.
Box,
Yes.
Dyke,
Yes.
Kaylin,
Yes.
Merrily.
Yes. Item 8, request to approve JZ 21 PUD 126, a request from Joe Kelly for a PUD with an underlying zoning of CG, commercial general, and closing a private utility easement. The general location is 802 West Main. Ms. Hilton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council, and staff. Before I get started, I'm going to ask if the applicant is present. Is Mr. Josh McFarland or Mr. Joe Kelly available to take questions at the end? Again, is Mr. Josh McFarland or Mr. Joe Kelly available to take questions on this project at the end? Okay, maybe they will pipe up here in a minute. This is Melody Court, and it seems like everybody has heard about it at some point or other. There's been lots of exciting announcements. I actually got the paper. Apparently, we now have a Melody District. I was like, okay, there you go. I didn't even know it. So I'm glad we have a paper. This is Melody Court. It's directly adjacent to Melody Lane. And Melody Lane, as you know, is the vibrant hotspot for economic redevelopment. It was a failing strip center, and Mr. McFarland and Red Dog Construction and their partners have come in and taken that project. We've got some exciting new tenants in that area, including the first brewery in the city of Jenks. This is very close to the heart of Jenks. It's on Main Street. And this is, I would say, probably phase 2. And phase 2 includes some outdoor fields and a strip of office/retail space adjacent to Main Street. So I think when this went to Planning Commission, sorry about that, they did vote 7-0 unanimously to approve the project with a few comments. I'll go through the first comment. There was a question about the double yellow line, and there was concern that that would prohibit any left turn. It was determined that it is not illegal to make a left turn on a double yellow line. Definitely not my category of conversation. And excuse me. When we get into it and look at some of the things, there was a second comment, and we'll talk about this in a minute. Whenever it comes to platting, there is a shared parking agreement, and that shared parking agreement they want included in the language of the deed of dedication. I thought that was a really good idea. There were some other questions. If you're looking at page 230 in the staff report, they talked about potentially limiting the amount of space of retail due to parking. They did not make that a recommendation. They talked about lighting. They felt very comfortable with the conversation as it was presented on the project. They also talked about the athletic fields. And as you know, most of you probably know that these fields that are there will be accessed from the Sports Armory. Restrooms will be available through the Sports Armory. They anticipate that if there was a tournament of some sort on the fields, that at that time, most likely they would request some additional restroom facilities. There's also a conversation about the cell tower on the site. That cell tower property was part of the sales transaction to the Red Dog Group, and the lease stayed with the previous owner. And I cannot speak to where that's at in the process, but that will eventually, sometime in the future, maybe sooner, maybe later, it will go away. The new owners are very excited about it leaving. I can tell you that much. So they will always be supportive and do everything they can to get it out sooner rather than later. Public comment, there was none at the time of this report. So the uses are athletic uses, outdoor fields, and commercial office and retail space. I asked them to rezone it. They probably could have kept the zoning as it was, but I wanted to get rid of the industrial light. It's been an ongoing conversation, and it was a big deal in the comprehensive plan. So they're going to rezone it with this request to commercial general and put a PUD number 126 as the overlay zoning. It fits within the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan says it should be local commercial, and it's a really good fit there. It is platted, but we're going to do a replat because there are a lot of, and actually you have approved the preliminary replat as part of the consent agenda. They're basically separating the retail commercial center from the actual outdoor spaces, and that also is a really good idea. Those retail spaces are tenant owned, and that needed to be a separate lot and block. So it was a very, very, very old plat, and there's an easement that goes across there that we'll talk about that has nothing in it. The utility companies have signed off on it. We are required by state statute to give them a 30-day notice to respond. They've been given that notice. They will move forward. After tonight, we're asking for a closure, and then they will move forward in district court to vacate that easement. Then it will not be part of the new plat. So when we get to final plat, you will not see it on there. I had some comments. If you move to page 232, you'll see the actual map that we sent out as part of the legal notice. You can see the front portion adjacent to the Main Street is commercial general, and we're rezoning that back portion that is currently IL to commercial general as well. If you look on the next page, 233, you're going to see the comprehensive plan and an aerial view of a street view of Main Street. And then if you remember, very, very, very recently, there was basically an office use for an old gasoline station. I did have a question during the Planning Commission, or actually it was prior to our Planning Commission meeting. Commissioner West reached out to me and asked about the tanks that were in the ground. And I can't remember. I don't think I included it. I intended to. I have the letter stating from the Oklahoma Corporation Commission that all of that has been remediated and there is no adverse impact to the public, to the land, or I think it says to humans or the land or whatever. So they're good to go there. Standard language, section 900 regarding PUDs. On page 235, it is the staff evaluation. So the applicant has 3 requests. They're rezoning and putting an overlay. The primary reason for that overlay is, one, they cannot, if we did a traditional zoning and you had the uses for the retail commercial, they can meet the parking for that. If you're adding all of that open space for fields, they could not possibly ever come up with enough parking. It's too tight of a space. So there was already an existing cross parking agreement with multiple lots there. And that agreement will be part of the plat. And it is already stated that it's required in the planned unit development. The other thing is, because commercial and retail has very specific hours, and generally speaking, field and practice and tournaments have different set of hours. One of the primary tenants in the retail space is an office use. So that's really an 8 to 5 use. Then they will be opening up those parking spaces. So I think parking was probably the biggest issue. Mr. McFarland with Josh McFarland with the Red Dot Construction knows that it will be highly detrimental to their business plan and their business model if they cannot get adequate parking, and they believe that they've structured it in such a way that it will not be harmful in that area. So A is rezoning was required by staff to remove potential industrial uses. The PUD allows for shared parking in perpetuity. The PUD also allows for shared offsite monument sign. So the primary sign for this site will be on that little island between the 2 lots. So it's probably 3 or 4 feet off of the actual property line, but very close to Melody Court. I didn't have any problem with that. The PUD allows for, C is the monument sign offsite. Also, the uses allowed were created to custom fit the site goals. So as you know, we created the use unit 19.5 for Melody Lane, and we used it again over here in this Melody Court PUD. Let's see, E staff has presented preliminary comments for review. They were really great to work with. Mr. Kelly, who did the planned unit development, got everything back to me same day he submitted it. I reviewed it within a couple of days and he got it back and corrected everything. Same with the preliminary plat. Withstanding the Planning Commission comments and any comments that you make tonight, they have already addressed all of my comments and gotten them back with me. They also addressed the limits of no access and access presented by our city engineer. He preferred that they close the furthest west access because it was too close to the property on the west. So they didn't want that gym, the patrons coming out of the gym, turning and potentially hitting these customers, or at least pushing it down a little bit. We don't have spacing requirements currently. We will get spacing requirements in our future subdivision regulations, but at this time we went with our gut and said you need to move it down. They were willing to do that. So again, The easement vacation is an, did someone say something?
This is Chris Floyd. I just wanted to clarify what
Did I
he's talking about next.
Okay, go ahead, Chris.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to clarify what you had just said about the access points.
Yes, sir.
What I asked them to do is remove the middle access point that they had, which was, I guess, more toward the middle of the two lots that are adjoining Main Street, and keep the one that's on the far west side. Their proposed access moves a little bit to the east, which is, it's not ideal, but they're removing that middle access point, which is what I was more concerned about. So they've done that. And anyway, I'm sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to make sure that the counselors didn't get something that, wait a minute, I thought we were getting rid of this.
I
just
said it wrong.
clarify. It's okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Cloyd. I appreciate that very much. So approving the easement will allow them, we will close it with your approval, and then they will vacate it at district court. And that's very important for them. Let's see. If you go down to the recommendation, approving this request will allow them to change the zoning from IL on that back portion to commercial general. So the entire two parcels will be commercial general with that PUD 126. And it will also, you've already approved the preliminary plat through the consent agenda, and it will also approve the easement closure, which will allow for the ultimate vacation of easement in district court. So on page 237, you get a picture, front page of the PUD 126. It shows the site plan. And as it's presented, that diagonal green patch along the top of the page is the landscaping adjacent to Main Street. Then you can see you've got 1, 2, 4 tenants, and then 2 more that kind of go east-west, and then 3 fields in the back. At this time, the fields would only be accessed at the full development through the armory. If you go to page 238, it talks about the general purposes, the specific purposes, and the permitted uses. So in permitted uses, it allows for CG, anything commercial general, as per the table 1, which is on the next page. And then it kind of defines use unit 19.5. Use unit 20 has some exceptions to it. So if you went to the zoning code, it doesn't allow for everything in use unit 20. It's more specific. Talks about parking. Page 239, you're going to see the table. And then there's some asterisks next to the X's. So anything that was in the zoning code that had an S for a specific use permit or had an E for a special exception has been removed or modified by definition. So you can see here all the things that are allowed now and in the future. Page 240 is the bulk and area requirements. And normally I tell you what it says and what the code says and what the PUD says. I believe in this case they met all of the bulk and area requirements for CG. So then if you go down to screening, the screening is whatever is required per CG. The signage, that's where we are going to get that request to have it off-site. Parking is whatever is provided in the PUD, and that is that shared parking agreement. Lighting is shielded, direct downward. And I think one of the issues that was brought up in Planning Commission is that the lights are very, very bright right now, and they look forward to seeing them be something shorter in height and shielded downward because they are kind of bright. Or at least there's one there. We will not come back to have a corridor appearance district review through the ARC. We're going to review it as seen tonight, and then at the staff level as we get the actual building permits. We tried very hard to work with this applicant to get them moving forward. We've known for several months it was coming. Also knew that they were on a very tight timeline. That's why we are doing preliminary plat, and you'll see it practically immediately again. And the the very near future. So that is pretty much what I had to submit to you all. Let me ask again, is Mr. Josh McFarland or Joe Kelly available to answer questions? They are not present. I am all you have. I'll do my best. Although I feel like some of you may know more than me about this project.
Direct all your questions to Kaylin.
Kaylin, my first question is, no, I'm very familiar with the sport fields, age groups, sizes, requirements. I don't really believe that tournaments will take a lot of parking because these 3 fields that are proposed are smaller in nature, and those would be more aligned with youth sports. I did speak with Mr. McFarland, and he said that he was going to anticipate soccer, football, and lacrosse. But again, they will not be full regulation fields. They're smaller in size, so it'll just be the youth. And I can't wait to get out there and see it, especially with youth lacrosse out there. We've already used the facilities, and excuse me, I know people that have already used the facilities with their sporting teams, and it's a really great place to be. I think with the advent of these new buildings, it will make it a destination point of access in the city. And I am really looking forward to moving this along, getting it proposed, and seeing how it develops. No questions, just comments.
And very, very cool project. Very appreciative to the developer, and kudos to Kaylin. I know that your fingerprints are all over this one, so excited to have it. Any other questions on this one?
Yeah, Coach Pace is going to be basically in charge of the field there, and what he has planned is y'all are just going to be happy.
Oh yeah, I know Jeff, and yeah, he's excited about it too.
Yes, he is.
Any motions?
Motion to approve.
I'll second that.
All right, let's vote.
Murray,
Yes.
Isbell,
Yes.
Box,
Yes.
Dyke,
Yes.
Kaylin,
Yes.
Merrily.
Yes. Item 9, request to approve ordinance number 1547 related to JZ 21 PUD 126.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Let's vote.
Murray,
Yes.
Isbell,
Yes.
Box,
Yes.
Dyke,
Yes.
Kaylin,
Yes.
Merrily.
Yes. Item 10, request to approve emergency clause for ordinance number 1547, making it effective immediately upon passage.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Let's vote.
Murray,
Yes.
Isbell,
Yes.
Box,
Yes.
Dyke,
Yes.
Kaylin,
Yes.
Merrily.
Yes. Item 11, request to approve ordinance number 1548, closing a private utility easement in Melody Court plat.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right. Thank you. Let's vote.
Murray,
Yes.
Isbell,
Yes.
Box,
Yes.
Dyke,
Yes.
Kaylin,
Yes.
Merrily.
Yes. I'm sorry, was that 11 or 12 that we just did?
That was 11.
That was 11.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Sorry. 12, request to approve emergency clause for ordinance number 1548, making it effective immediately upon passage.
So moved.
Thank you. We have a second.
And seconded.
All right, let's vote. Sorry.
Murray,
Yes.
Isbell,
Yes.
Box,
Yes.
Dyke,
Yes.
Kaylin,
Yes.
Merrily.
Yes. Item 13, request to approve JZ 21668, a request from Nicole Watts to rezone a parcel from AG Agriculture to CS Commercial Shopping Center. The general location is 12023 South 27th Avenue West. Ms. Hilton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council, and staff. I'm going to ask before we get into this, is Ms. Watts or anyone representing this project available to answer questions at the end?
Everyone is
Nicole.
on spring break, Marseille.
I don't know if this is good timing or bad timing.
Hey, there are no excuses. This is a virtual meeting. They should be here. I'm joking. That's good.
Okay. Well, thank you all. I'm actually kind of excited about this one because we're going to put a little bit of competition down there by Glenpool.
Yes.
Maybe we can grab some of those tax dollars before it's all said and done. So this is a request to rezone a property from ag to commercial shopping. This one has also been in the works for many months, and I felt like it took me many months to comprehend what in the world has taken place over the years on this site. There was previously a specific use permit, which allowed for mini storage to be built. Specific use permits have a 2-year sunset clause. I went through all of that. It was never built. I had it removed from the INCOG map. It was voided, so that's no longer an issue. And this rezoning would void it anyway. The purpose of this is to build a retail center, and then adjacent to it to the east, there's another lot, and they're going to put both of those lots in a larger project. It'll be also a type of destination. They ultimately want some outdoor activity, some retail space, and potentially a food truck park. So I've been spending many hours researching what that looks like in a zoning code. But in the meantime, this is just a simple rezoning from ag to CS. They do have a plat submitted on this that you'll see very, very soon.
Hey, Marseille, I'm here.
Hey, thank you. This is, I believe we have Nicole Watts present. She's going to be available to answer questions for you. So I did say on page 255, which is page 2 of the staff report, it says intended use retail and ultimately kind of a destination, maybe an outdoor area with some food trucks, etc. And then it says public comment none at the time of this staff report. That was true at Planning Commission, but we did have a neighbor show up and ask questions, or sorry, she listened. She did not ask any questions. She was satisfied with the discussion and had no questions at that time. So you're in the evaluation, the request fits the comprehensive plan. I don't see any adverse impact to the surrounding properties through this. It was pretty well established that we wanted commercial in that corridor and on those properties, and that is exactly what they're doing. The primary comment that I had is that plating is required. They've got some hurdles with their engineering as far as I believe it's water, maybe water and sewer, but they're working diligently to get that solved. The picture that you see on page 256 kind of shows that whole general area where everything south of 121st and west of Highway 75 is Glenpool. And this is the lot kind of to the north. I didn't put any handy arrows for you all. Sorry about that. There was a memo. This is where I struggled for weeks trying to figure out what had ever been done. Basically, it got rezoned. It was supposed to be that lot, but it wasn't that lot. And so anyway, here we are tonight. The legal description never worked. So we're doing it, and it'll be done this evening, hopefully. So, uh-oh, did I not print everything? Let me see here. Yep, that's it. I don't have any other comments. I'm excited about the project. This is another local company. They're ready to go. They've got building plans ready for their retail. We talked to them about not putting a sea of parking adjacent to the highway, and they've rearranged that. There is some parking, but it's definitely not the monstrosity that we often see on commercial developments adjacent to large arterials. So they've been willing to work with us, and they are certainly excited about getting their retail off the ground. That's all I have. If you have any other questions for me or Nicole Watts, she is available as well.
If I might, two things. One, I know a couple of years ago we were looking at some development east of that or in that general area, some box stores and stuff. Is this going to interfere with any of that potential? And then maybe a question for Chris or Robert.
There is still land available for that type of development. It does not eat it all up. There's still land available.
Okay, so it's not interfering. And then two, I think not too long ago, we discussed or approved about extending some of the water sewer from the church north of there, kind of south, and that would maybe kind of tie into what they're saying.
Yes,
Is that
that's
correct?
absolutely, yes, that is absolutely
Wonderful.
correct. Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay.
Lots of moving pieces. They, like I said, they've got some hurdles to get actual doors open, but they're in the process of working through those, and it's very exciting.
I'm ready to go shopping there. Let's go.
Me too. Any other questions?
That's very good. It's time to get some development up on the Jenks side of 121st.
Yes, for sure.
Long overdue.
Absolutely. Any other questions on this?
I will make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Number 13.
All right, let's vote.
Murray,
Yes.
Isbell,
Yes.
Box,
Yes.
Dyke,
Yes.
Kaylin,
Yes.
Merrily.
Yes. Item 14, request to approve ordinance number 1549 relating to JZ 21668.
So moved.
Seconded.
Thank you. Let's vote.
Murray,
Yes.
Isbell,
Yes.
Box,
Yes.
Dyke,
Yes.
Kaylin,
Yes.
Merrily.
Yes. Item 15, request to approve emergency clause for ordinance number 1549, making it effective immediately upon passage.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Let's vote.
Murray,
Yes.
Isbell,
Yes.
Box,
Yes.
Dyke,
Yes.
Kaylin,
Yes.
Merrily.
Yes. Item 16, request to award a professional engineering contract for the 106th Street lift station and force main extension design to Carollo Engineers Incorporated out of Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, in the amount not to exceed $689,442, including additional services, funding for the same to be paid by both 2014 GO Bond Fund associated with account number 328445392 for design work related to the lift station in the amount of $307,871, and Fund 56 reimbursement to JPWA with account number 568445392 for design work related to the force main for the amount of $381,571. Mr. Cloyd.
Mr. Mayor, City Councilors, according to the wastewater collection system master plan, recommendations were made for some system improvements. One of the most significant projects was for the 106th and Elm lift station and force main upgrades. So staff has solicited engineering proposals from 3 different engineering firms to provide design, bidding, and construction administration services. Carollo Engineering was determined to be the most responsive and highly qualified firm. On page 2 of the memo for this item, you can see the breakdown of the costs that, or the bids, or, I'm sorry, the proposal for each task that was provided. The fee proposal has been divided to show the basic services, which indicates the cost not to exceed the amount shown for each defined task. And the costs have also been split between lift station improvements and the force main based on the available funding sources. Staff request to award the professional engineering contract to the 106th Street lift station force main extension designed to Carollo Engineers Inc. in the amount not to exceed $689,442, which includes additional services. Are there any questions for this item or on this item?
So I guess I'm I'm sorry, Mayor. Go ahead.
That's all right.
Oh,
I was just going to ask if you had any questions.
Okay. Did I understand that this will be moving it from that location to a different location? And so it would be a brand new lift station facility able to handle future issues, I guess, or future needs.
Yes, we're going to look, one of the things that the design engineer is going to do is look at what's the best site. There's an option to move it to the east. We also have the 106th Street extension project that is coming up fairly soon as well. So we want to get, one thing we want to do is get the lift station away from 106th and Elm. However, one idea is also to move it to the west side of Elm, but shield it better, because that would get the lift station out of the floodplain. And when you have when you have a lift station in the floodplain, you've got to do certain design things to elevate it. So there can be some pros to moving it to the west side of Elm, but right now the primary idea is to move it closer to Polecat Creek, along that extension of what 106th and 106th Street would go towards the east.
So if you moved it to the west, I know it's preliminary, but would it be kind of on the southwest corner in front of the big rock area? I mean, because there's a ranch, I guess, on the northeast or northwest corner.
Page 274, Craig, shows you there's two blue rectangles that show you the potential location. Is that right, Chris?
Yes, and again, that's very preliminary. We'd have to look at all the different things about how can we shield it, how can we make sure that because one of the issues is the odor. We want to keep the odor down, and not that is one of the issues where it's located now. So we want to try to mitigate or eliminate that as much as possible.
Okay, good. Thank you.
So, Mr. Cloyd, what are the downfalls, or what's the downside of moving it to what you call the proposed location that I've seen on page 274? Is there any downside to moving it out there? Because that would seem to me to make the most sense.
Well, the only downside, again, is just going back to the floodplain issue. So you're moving it deeper into the floodplain as you get closer to Polecat Creek. So you're going to affect how much you're going to have to raise the top of the wet well, basically, for that lift station, so that it's at least a foot above the 100-year flood elevation in that area. So that's the downside of that location versus putting it on the west side of Elm. But it does get it away from the current population centers, gets it further away from Elm. We would shield it in such a manner that it does not detract from the future gateway to the riverfront district. So we definitely are keeping that in mind. We don't want to have a stinky lift station that's right there as you drive into, hey, let's go do some shopping.
And the decision we're making tonight really has no bearing on whether or not we move it to the proposed location or the alternate locations.
No, this is just approving the engineering contract. And one of the things within the contract is that the consultant would provide a conceptual design presentation to the city council once we get to that stage.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I like the fact we already have funding for this. It's on our 5-year capital projects plan, and as he mentioned, from some of the other different bonds. So that's always a positive.
Yes.
And it looks like the bids came in under the money we had budgeted for that.
Absolutely.
So the money that we're looking at is totally for engineering, correct?
Correct.
And it may be in here, and I just didn't read fine print because I didn't see where that went. What's a ballpark figure on what, or do we even know a ballpark figure on what this is going to cost once it's moved, or including the move?
We've received an estimate, but again, at this point, I don't know that I really want to talk much about the estimate. Okay. It's going to be to give a ballpark that's very general, is anywhere from probably $5 to $12 million for the force main and the lift station. But again, it's extremely general.
And I didn't mean specific, but yeah, at least so we have an idea of the future of what we're going to be looking at. So, okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
One last question, Mr. Cloyd, since it was inspired by Councilor Dyke's comment. If you look at the bottom of page 264, in the third and second and last sentence, you're saying that the lift station, the funding for the force main is available from fees collected when new subdivisions connect to existing infrastructure. So you're talking about future money, not current money, or are you talking about current money?
What I was trying to explain is what Fund 56 is, because the reimbursement to JPWA it's kind of a general title, but that's what that fund is called. So that's just explaining how the fees that go into that fund are collected. So we actually have these fees already from previous developments that have been made.
Okay, so this is current money, not future money.
Yes, that's correct.
But there is still future money coming.
We hope.
Yeah.
We hope there's future developments that will
Yes,
put into this fund.
All right. Anything else from council?
I'll make a motion that we approve item number 16, request to award a professional engineering contract for the 106th Street Lift Station and Force Main Extension design to Carroll Engineers, Inc. et al.
I will second that.
Thank you. Let's vote.
Murray,
Yes.
Isbell,
Yes.
Box,
Yes.
Dyke,
Yes.
Kaylin,
Yes.
Merely.
Yes. Thank you to Mr. Cloyd and team on this. It doesn't get much more important than this. Are there any motions to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All right, let's vote.
Murray,
Yes.
Isbell,
Yes.
Box,
Yes.
Dyke,
Yes.
Kaylin,
Yes.
Merely.
Yes, we're adjourned. Does everyone want to do one more? How about we call to order the Jenks Public Works Authority? It's Tuesday, March 16th, 2021. It's 8:22 p.m. Let's call roll, please.
Murray,
Here.
Isbell,
Here.
Box,
Here.
Dyke,
Here.
Kaylin,
Here.
OJ, Jerry.
I'm here. All right, Mr. Shrout, hit us with the monthly or the general manager's report.
Chair and all members of the authority, you have your engineering projects weekly update in your packet. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Any questions? He's happy to answer them. Okay. How about we hear from Mr. Driscoll now with the monthly chamber report?
Mr. Chairman, give me 1 second. There we go. The video came on. Mr. Chairman, members of the authority, it's fun to be here tonight. As Mr. Shroud alluded to earlier, we've had an exciting couple of weeks with some developments, so that's been a lot of fun. You've got the written report from me, just a couple of quick highlights that kind of tie in together. One of them is we have fully rebranded the Business Retention and Expansion Program to, we call it the Business Checkup Program. Same thing we did before, just gives it a better name that it, is be more easily understood. So we're starting to get some good data on that. Now we're hitting that good critical mass point where you can kind of start looking for trends. So that's been good. The overall feel we're getting is things are going well economically. You got a few outliers and a few challenges, but by and large, things are going pretty well. I think most of you got it. We also launched our monthly newsletter for economic development, Jenks, so that's been doing well. Social media. Sorry, I'm going through my notes. I'm trying to get to the page that I actually highlighted something I want to talk about. Something we are working on, and you'll be seeing more of this. What is this, March, April? We're working with our contractor to finalize the Discover Jenks tourism website. So you mentioned the fireworks earlier. We'll certainly have it up by then, and that'll be a huge centerpiece to, driving tourism and visitors to Jenks and more tax dollars. So that'll be fun. Something I want to highlight that it's not in the report, but hopefully we'll have the report here pretty soon. Zach is working directly with 2 national chains, one that was in Jenks a week and a half ago and one that will be in Jenks later this week. These are very, very hot leads. We're very excited about it. And I think at least one of them is as hot as they are. We're going to get a win on at least one of them. So that'll be nice.
Fantastic.
Hey, what are they doing when they're here?
They're doing site visits and data collection is their big thing.
And who's with them other than you and Zach?
It depends on each one. There's no consistency over who it is. Typically, they'll be with, and one of them they're with a property owner. With another one coming this week, they're going to be with the realtor. We will meet with them at least, the one this week we will meet with at least once while they're here just to check in. But the second one we're meeting with, the one we're meeting with this week actually was one spurred on by Zach. He's been reaching out to them for about 4 or 5 months, and they kind of went silent for us about 2 months and then popped up again a couple of weeks ago, and he just emailed them out of the blue and they said, "Oh, absolutely, we'd love to talk now." So
Well, if it would help to have someone from council, please send us an invite.
Only if you're buying lunch. I'm kidding.
Hey, that sounds helpful.
Did I
I
hear?
don't have that city council credit card yet. How's that work? We'll talk about that later.
You have to invite Robert Carr for that.
Josh, did
Ma'am.
you say that? Did you say that it was retail, or did you just say it was a national business?
They are both restaurants.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah.
Does
That
the
makes
name
sense.
start with a? I'm kidding.
it rhymes with.
Well, that's very exciting. Good job.
But with that, I'll open up to questions, clarifications, stories.
Well, thank
Summer
you for the
movies and
tenacity.
hot dog cookout.
Well, actually, Counselor, you bring it up. We talked about that today. Actually, I'm rebranding it Craig Murray's annual hot dog roast. So
Well, Gary said he'll help me.
Leave my name out of it.
I'm actually thinking maybe midsummer we'll kind of do a thing. We probably won't do the movie side because it gets so hot, but maybe do some games and hot dogs and just kind of make it an easy laid back event.
That's great.
Wonderful.
All right. Any
Good job.
questions for? Yes. Here.
Thank you,
Any
Josh.
questions for Josh Driscoll? Okay. Well, thank you to you and your team. You're doing great work.
Have a great night.
Too.
Thanks, Josh.
All right, let's move on to our first order of business, consideration and appropriate action relating to a request for approval of the consent agenda. Any questions or motions on that consent agenda of ours?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I will second.
All right, let's vote.
Murray,
Yes.
Isbell,
Yes.
Box,
Yes.
Dyke,
Yes.
Kaylin,
Yes.
Charlie.
Yes. We will pull item 2 and move on to item 3. Consider and adopt a resolution number 2020-04 approving and entering into a replenishment agreement by the Jenks Public Works Authority with the Jenks Aquarium Authority with respect to indebtedness to be incurred by the Jenks Aquarium Authority. Mr. Shroud or Sauceda, is there anything else that this body needs to know about this one?
No, I think we kind of explained it. This is what really helps the JAA receive financing, knowing that they have the water and sewer cells from the JPWA backing up that debt.
Okay. Any questions from the authority on that?
Do we have an estimated time of the bond implementation?
45 to 60 days.
The standard that you always tell me.
Yes.
Thank
No
you.
matter the question.
You need to make a sticky note, Gary, so you know that for next time.
Put it right here and you guys can tell me. I just wanted to know how fast we're going to move on it.
Well, I will make a motion to
Little
approve.
legs can carry them. Okay.
Oh, sorry, Bobby.
I was just saying as fast as they can.
A motion to
You got a
approve?
motion?
Second.
Thank you. Let's vote.
Murray,
Yes.
Isbell,
Yes.
Box,
Yes.
Dyke,
Yes.
Kaylin,
Yes.
Charlie.
Yes. Item 4, request approval of resolution number 202103, a resolution amending the annual appropriations by $381,571 and account number 56-844-5392, JPWA reimbursement to JPWA fund, sanitary sewer infrastructure, buildings and improvements for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2021 to fund the design work of the force main at 106th and Elm in the total amount of $381,571. Mr. Cloyd, is there anything new on this one?
And this is actually mine. This is just the supplemental appropriation for the engineering contract that was awarded or approved earlier. Fund 56 is one that we don't usually budget from. This is kind of the proverbial, mattress, money under the mattress fund. And this is what's helping fund the design work for the force main.
Great. Any questions or motions on this one?
At
I'll
one
make a
point,
motion. Go ahead.
Good.
I was just saying, maybe at some point you could share with us how much money is hiding under the mattress. Not tonight, though, of course.
I'll make a motion to approve item number 4, request approval of resolution number 2021-03.
I will second.
All right. Thank you. Let's vote.
Murray,
Yes.
Isbell,
Yes.
Box,
Yes.
Dyke,
Yes.
Caitlin,
Yes.
Shirley.
Yes. Any motions to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All right. Let's vote.
Murray,
Yes.
Isbell,
Yes.
Box,
Yes.
Dyke,
Yes.
Caitlin,
Yes.
Shirley.
Yes. We're adjourned. Good job.